With the Ohio primary election behind us, the eyes of the political world turn to the November election a little more than 7 months away. That's where we're looking. Ahead on Face the State, the matchups are set, including one of the most important races in the country. Incumbent Senator Democrat Sherrod Brown faces a challenge from Republican nominee Bernie Moreno. It could determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. We'll look at what we could expect from the candidates as the campaign heats up. Also, making Ohio the Silicon Heartland. The government announces a massive investment in the billions of dollars for the Intel plant project in New Albany, what it could mean for memory chip making in the state and the country. Plus,
this is a bully-free zone.
A little Central Ohio pageant queen is using her crown to take on a big cause, all while building up her own confidence. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. We're coming off a busy political week in the Buckeye State. We start with a look at the primary election results as we now have a clear picture of who will face off in key races in November. At the presidential level, former President Donald Trump received 79% of the vote. With that, he will get all the delegates from Ohio because we are a winner-take-all state on the Republican side. Even before our primary, Trump already had enough delegates to secure his nomination for president. Meanwhile, despite Nikki Haley suspending her campaign, she still walked away with 14% of the vote. The other three candidates combined for just 6%. And on the Democratic side, the incumbent, President Joe Biden, secured 87% of the vote. Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota got 13%. Biden had also already received enough delegates to be the Democratic presidential nominee. Now to the race here in Ohio that's been getting national attention, the race for Senate. In total, more than $40 million was spent on the GOP side on political ads alone. And in the end, Trump-endorsed businessman Bernie Moreno won in every single county of all 88 and secured 51% of the vote in a three-person race against State Senator Matt Dolan and Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Dolan was endorsed by Governor Mike DeWine. Early on election night, he was neck and neck with Moreno, but eventually Dolan came in second with 33% of the vote. After primary elections, attention usually turns quickly to the general election. That's what happened election night in the race for Senate as Senator Brown and Bernie Moreno get ready for November. Businessman Bernie Moreno took the stage Tuesday night after securing a resounding victory in the race for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in Ohio. More than 50% of voters chose the Trump-backed candidate in a race that saw the three Republicans spend more than $40 million on advertising. He thanked supporters, then took aim at his opponent in the general election, three-term incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown.
This is a guy who is for unfeathered immigration. He is an open borders radical. What does that do? Who does that hurt? It hurts the very people he pretends to help.
On election night, Senator Brown released a statement saying in part, the choice ahead of Ohio is clear. Bernie Moreno has spent his career and campaign putting himself first and would do the same if elected. Elections come down to whose side you're on, and I'll always work for Ohio. Governor Mike DeWine is now getting behind Moreno after endorsing State Senator Matt Dolan in the primary. He said he talked to Moreno and committed to helping him win in the fall.
This is going to be, I think, a very expensive race. It's going to be a very close race. It's going to be a hotly contested race, and it may determine actually which party controls the United States Senate. So there's an awful lot at stake.
That's why it's estimated political ad spending could reach into the hundreds of millions of dollars, with the big issues being the economy, border security, and abortion, if issues take center stage.
I hope issues will be the central part of it. I think we're going to get a lot of personality. In a tight race like this, you might get quite a bit of negative campaigning, some more credible than others.
And Professor Devine says the economy will likely be a big issue. He expects Senator Brown to talk about fighting for the working class and the dignity of work, and for Marino to paint a more negative picture of the economy under Joe Biden and Sherrod Brown. We'll take a deeper look at what happened in the race for the Republican nomination and the battle ahead between Senator Sherrod Brown and Bernie Marino with our political analysts a little bit later in the show. As for the House district races in our area, in District 2, it will be Democrat Samantha Meadows taking on Republican David Taylor. Meadows ran unopposed, while Taylor ran against 10 other candidates. In District 4, Democrat Tammy Wilson defeated Steve Thomas. She will run against Republican incumbent Jim Jordan in November. Jordan was unopposed on the primary ballot. And in District 15, Democrat Adam Miller beat Zirka Abid. He will now face Republican incumbent Mike Carey, who also ran unopposed in his district. Turning now to a highly contested race here in Franklin County, where 3 Democrats ran for county prosecutor along with 1 Republican. Democrat Shayla Favor will be up against Republican John Rutan in November. Favor won her race with 41% of the vote. Rutan ran unopposed in the Republican primary.
This was a very contentious primary in Franklin County, and while I am incredibly respectful of my opponents, I prevailed today because once again I shared a vision for leadership, for change for Franklin County, and the voters agreed with me, and I will continue to do that throughout the rest of the year.
There's a lot of responsibility that comes with this position, and so instead of fighting to help a few, I can help everybody by focusing on the issues I've been fighting for, and that deals with what's the proper charge, what's fair bail, what's a reasonable plea offer.
If Favor wins in November, she will become the first black prosecutor ever in Franklin County. She is a current Columbus City Council member and former Columbus Assistant City Attorney. Rutan has been a defense attorney for the past 13 years. Now, an Election Day sign of the resilience of Ohioans. The Indian Lake community continues to clean up after a deadly EF3 tornado tore through the area on March 14th, just 5 days before Election Day. Yet, on Tuesday, voters in Logan County were still determined to make their voices heard. Voting went on as scheduled at Indian Lake High School, the same building that served as a shelter and donation center after the tornado. We talked to a county election official who says this year the polling location served as more than just a place to vote.
It's nice because people are coming in here. I talked to a few of my poll workers, and usually it's get in, get out, go home, and we have been a place now where people are just coming and talking to each other and making sure everybody's okay, and we feel good about that.
Voting data shows around 7,000 people voted in this year's primary across Logan County. Some other big news came from the federal government this past week. A new, huge funding boost for the Silicon Heartland. The U.S. Commerce Department is pumping billions of dollars into Intel projects across the country, including this semiconductor fabrication plant in New Albany. But the big investment comes as the timeline for the project has been pushed back. Senator Sherrod Brown says this new funding for Intel is all thanks to the CHIPS Act. Leaders say the money will help momentum. 10 TV's Andrew Kinsey has the story.
A big boost to Ohio's Intel project.
This is a big chunk of money.
But I can say with pretty good confidence that the Ohio share of this will be in the billions.
$8.5 billion is getting split between 4 Intel projects across the country, including the one here in Lincoln County. Ohio leaders say the money will help propel the project.
It's going to allow the project to reach its full potential. It's going to bury the term Rust Belt once and for all.
The funding also includes millions to fund the future of Ohio workers.
We are partnering with 80 education institutions to develop the workforce who's going to work in these fabs. 80 across the entire state, Central Ohio, Southeast Ohio.
Senator Sherrod Brown says the investment is expected to create 3,000 manufacturing and 7,000 construction jobs here in the Buckeye State.
We're going to be building in Ohio for a long time, and we're here to support it.
The Silicon Heartland, as we call it, is real. When this project's done, Ohio is going to make the most modern semiconductors on the planet. That's a fact.
Governor DeWine says he's not concerned about Intel pushing back its construction timeline because it's still in the range the company initially gave for the project. Intel says it plans to have the facility up and running in 2027 or 2028. When we come back, we'll get right back to politics. What happened that put Bernie Moreno over the top in the race for the Republican nomination for Senate, and what we can expect from Moreno versus Brown heading toward November. After tens of millions of dollars and more than 1 million votes, Ohioans have chosen their nominees for one of the state's U.S. Senate seats. Republican businessman Bernie Moreno will go up against incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown. I'm joined today by University of Cincinnati political science professor David Niven and Ohio State University political science professor emeritus Paul Beck to take a closer look at the November election. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
Good to be here.
First of all, David, what is your big takeaway on Moreno's victory by 17 percentage points?
I mean, the big takeaway is he had the one asset that mattered. He had Trump's endorsement. And if you watch these candidates in action, they said much the same things. They talked about the same issues. They even had the same criticisms of each other as they ran around calling each other liberal. So, the one thing that stood out in this race was having that Trump endorsement, and that Trump rally helped push that knowledge of that endorsement over the top.
Is that same takeaway for you, Paul?
It is.
How do you see it?
Well, Moreno was in third place before the Trump endorsement came along, and it lifted him above the pack. It was worth, I think, even more than Trump's endorsement of J.D. Vance 2 years ago, but a very valuable thing. As Republican voters were looking at those three candidates, I don't think they saw much difference among them until the Trump endorsement came in, and that made the difference in a way that the DeWine and Portman endorsements did not make a difference.
David, how big is the money that you're expecting to be spent from here over the next 225 days or so?
The number is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. This is going to be the most expensive race in the nation. And you have two factors going on. One is the Senate is so close that every seat is crucial, and this could be the seat that the whole Senate's balance hangs on. And then the second thing is, Ohio, while it was once the purplest of purple states and is no more, it may be a Republican state, but it's a Republican state with a Democratic senator with a proven record of victory. So that is a formula for full funding of these campaigns.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. And Paul, what do you expect as far as tone?
Well, I think it's going to become very negative. Sherrod Brown typically doesn't run negative races, but he may end up doing that against Moreno.
Or the PACs.
Or the PACs will, yes, exactly. And the PACs, of course, are going to come crashing in to Ohio, and there will be many of them. We won't be able to figure out exactly what they are. They all have really wholesome sounding names to them. But as David said, a lot of money is going to be spent. It's good for the TV stations in Ohio. Whether it's good for voters or not is another matter.
Yeah, TV stations, radio stations,
exactly.
Online, media.
Full
absolutely.
employment for political consultants.
Yes.
Do you think it's going to be negative too, or is it going to focus on issues?
I think it's going to be fairly negative, but I think the bottom line is Sherrod Brown wants this to be a choice between two people. He wants people thinking about Sherrod Brown versus Bernie Moreno. Bernie Moreno wants this to be a choice between two parties. He wants this to be Democrat versus Republican. And the whole thrust of the campaign will be about pushing the conversation in those directions.
Which issues do you think will be big?
I mean, because of who Sherrod Brown is and because of the contrast that I think he wants to build, all things economic, all things, having to do with, the concerns of working families, I think for Brown, that's where that person contrast comes in. He's going to talk about work, and he's going to say, my friend Bernie Moreno over here is a car dealer with some, maybe shady run-ins with the law and labor practices.
Do you think social issues will come to the fore as
well?
Oh,
I think for sure. I mean, abortion's going to be a big issue. Brown will talk about that. Moreno may not want to talk much about that. I think David is right in saying that economic issues are going to be stressed, because we need to remember that Brown is somebody who has done better than almost any other Democrat in Ohio in drawing votes from white working class people, particularly males, males and females, but more among males than other candidates were able to get. And so he's going to stress that during his campaign.
Yeah, and David, you told me he was the only Democrat to win a statewide race in more than a decade.
Literally, you know, anytime you see a candidate and the name Democrat next to it, they have lost in Ohio statewide time after time, except for Sherrod Brown.
Except for Sherrod Brown. Okay, you mentioned it too. The Trump effect proved to be big in the Republican primary. How much do you think it will have an impact now in the general election, Marino versus Brown?
Well, the default in Ohio right now, it's pro-Trump, it's pro-Republican. So, you know, if they canceled the race, this would be very bad news for Sherrod Brown. So this entire campaign, you know, we're not going to be the center of the political universe on the presidential side. We're not going to get events. We're not going to get campaign ads. We're not going to get the excitement. But the Senate race will be our proxy, our sort of hold on national relevance. And, you know, for Sherrod Brown, you know, this is not going to be a President Biden-oriented campaign. This is not going to be a campaign, you know, sort of oriented around the team. It's going to be about Sherrod Brown as the person, and he's going to sell, you know, the fact that Ohioans know him. He's been on the ballot many times.
Yeah,
people have voted for him
Senate
many
for
times.
18 years.
Right.
Yeah. Paul, do you see it, you know, playing out with the Trump support going to Marino and making this a really tight race?
Well, I think the Trump support clearly will go to Marino, and it already has, and it will be substantial. Brown has been able to cut against that kind of pressure in the past, and we'll see what happens going forward. Now, the thing to remember, by the way, is that it's March, and a lot could happen between now and early voting beginning.
November seems a really long time away.
It does. Now, it'll get there pretty quickly. But
that's true.
You know, we have two candidates for president who are older than virtually any other candidates have been over the years. Maybe they are the ones who are the oldest of them. There could be health problems going forward. Trump obviously is facing trials going forward. I don't know that that'll have much effect unless there is some kind of a decision made in these trials, but it could. And you can bet that Biden's people are going to focus on that, and just there'll be this drumbeat of, hey, this guy is standing trial in a variety of venues. Do you really want to vote in a president like that?
I want to turn to the presidential race now a little bit more. You touched on it too, talking about, you know, the Ohio's viability as a swing state or not. But we can show the graphic here for the presidential race where former President Trump did take 79% of the vote, but Nikki Haley still got 14%.
Yes.
Now, she was still in an active campaign when early voting started. But is there any surprise to you, David, that it was that she did get 14%?
No, and you know, even the candidates who've been out for months, you know, got a few votes here and there, Chris Christie and so forth. And those are the warning sign for Trump nationally, that those Haley voters, exit polls are showing, are not comfortable with Trump, and most of them are oriented to voting for Biden. And that's really where the danger is. You can't have slippage within your own party in this day and age of sort of polarized politics. You need all your supporters, and that's the danger sign.
And on the other side, we have the graphic to show the Democratic, the race, the way it played out, just between President Biden and Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips got 13% of the vote. Paul, do you see that as a kind of a protest vote, perhaps, against Biden?
I see it more as a policy protest vote. Many of these voters, if they vote, will come back to Biden, but probably won't go to Trump. On the Trump side, that protest vote, the Haley vote, and that of the other candidates, probably is more of an anti-Trump vote. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over time. I think a lot of Democrats, we read, especially young Democrats, are dissatisfied with the Biden administration when it comes to Israel and Gaza. How that gets resolved over the next few months will be important for them. In the end, there are a lot of other issues that are of concern to them, and they may bring them back to Biden.
David, I think in 2008 and 2012, Barack Obama won Ohio. Then in 16 and 20, Trump won 8 percentage points last time. Is Ohio still a swing state, or has it lost that moniker?
It's lost that moniker. And I mean, if you go back farther, you know, Clinton won Ohio twice, then the second George Bush won it twice, then Obama won it twice, then Trump won it twice.
So it really was back and forth.
And really for 100 years, you know, from 1912 to 2012, no state voted more closely with the nation than Ohio. But we're not that anymore. And really, that relationship between economics and voting split. And so when the blue collar, vote was no longer dependably Democratic, then those conservative red swaths of Ohio really, had their say. And so, there is no path right now. It doesn't matter really who the candidates are. It doesn't have to be Trump and Biden. Ohio was not going to be at the center of this presidential race.
And Paul, do you see it being any different this time around in terms of the vote in November than it was in 2020 when it was an 8 percentage point difference?
Well, I think the question is how much the Republican vote is a Trump vote. And if Trump goes away, will there be Republicans who stay, or Trump voters, I should say, who stay with the Republican Party or drift away to some other candidate on the Republican side, or drift away even to non-voting or Democratic voting? I don't think we know that. I think Trump was special.
But, Mike DeWine's coming off a landslide victory in 2022. Yes. He's not even a Trumpy Republican. So, it's a stretch to find evidence that there's much of a ray of hope for Democrats statewide. Again, unless that Democrat's named Sherrod Brown.
I agree in part. I think, though, the problem that the Democrats have had is a lack of bench strength.
Sure.
And, even the gubernatorial race 2 years ago pitted a candidate who was not at all known statewide, who didn't have a lot of money to run either, against a sitting governor. And it was really tough to mount any kind of a challenge to DeWine.
Dr. David Niven, Dr. Paul Beck, thank you both for your input and insight into the upcoming election today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Good. Well, coming up on Face the State, a tiny pageant queen with big dreams and a big message.
When someone's getting picked, you tell their moms. And when they're getting bullied, you tell their grown-ups.
Meet this 5-year-old who is making a difference while building up her own confidence. Contrary to what some people may believe, a pageant is not just a beauty contest. Confidence, poise, body positivity, all traits young girls can learn and grow through pageantry. As 10 TV's Yolanda Harris shows us, one tiny pageant queen from Central Ohio is building her self-confidence through competition, and she knows beauty is not only on the outside, it's also on the inside.
5-year-old Brielle Harkness could one day be the next Miss America.
And going to bring the big crown back to Ohio.
Today, though, she holds another title.
Miss Ohio Elementary Kindergarten.
Brielle was crowned last year, and 2024 marked the beginning of her journey.
I enjoy watching her. She gets really amped up. Like, in the moment, she loves pageants.
Community service is also something Brielle loves. It comes with the job.
And this is a bully-free zone.
She takes her anti-bullying message to events throughout Central Ohio.
When someone's getting picked, you tell their moms. And when they're getting bullied, you tell their grown-ups.
Pageantry is sort of a family affair. Brielle's older sister is the reigning Miss Gold at Bethune-Cookman University in Florida. But Mom tells me it's not just about the crown. Pageants also prepare young girls for success in life.
And when you are competing in these pageants, like public speaking, confidence, it's a huge thing. So I want her to have that always. So it's like a constant reminder. Hey, Brielle, people are watching. Hey, Brielle, you're smart. And she'll reply, I'm kind, you're beautiful. So just self-affirmations and just reminding her that, you are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit.
Being in a pageant is being a pageant girl and being a good girl.
It's not all glitz and glamour. Brielle's only 5. She still likes to play with friends and color in coloring books. She could lose interest in pageants, and that's okay. Mom says what she's learning and the confidence she's building within herself is something she'll always have.
Because she'll still have the poise. She still has the speaking ability. She still is friendly to people. She still knows how to make friends. So it's not like we're losing if she decides not to do a pageant anymore. We'll just move to the next thing and then, allow her to conquer that.
That was Yolanda Harris reporting. The family will travel to Little Rock, Arkansas in June for the Miss America Elementary pageant. Brielle will represent Ohio in the competition for scholarship money and the crown. The winner will get $5,000. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. We'll see you next Sunday at 11:30. Have a great day.